I guess I never saw it coming. I always thought my wife and I had a solid thing going. We've been together for nearly 8 years, married for 5, and I honestly thought we were pretty happy. Sure, we had the usual bumps here and there, work stress, the occasional disagreement about stupid stuff, but nothing major. I mean, we were best friends. At least that's how I saw it. But looking back, there were little things I should have noticed. Small shifts that didn't quite feel right at the time, but should have set off alarm bells. It started about 6 months ago. My wife, Anna, would come home later than usual, sometimes with these vague explanations like, I had to stay late at work, or I caught up with some colleagues for drinks. Nothing wrong with that on its own, right? But it was the inconsistency. Some days she'd be home late, other days she'd just seem off, distant, even when we were in the same room. I'd catch her glancing at her phone, quickly turning it face down when I walked by, which, honestly, didn't seem like her at all. We used to be so open with each other about stuff like that. Then, there was the night she got a call while we were having dinner. She excused herself to answer it, which seemed fine at first. But I could hear her tone change the second she picked up, like she was talking to someone who made her laugh just a little too easily, someone who wasn't me. When she came back, she was different, fidgeting, almost a little guilty looking. I didn't say anything about it. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But something in the pit of my stomach told me I wasn't imagining it. So, I did something I'd never done before. I snooped. I went through her phone when she was in the shower one day. Honestly, I wasn't even looking for anything specific. I didn't want to find something to confirm my suspicions. But I couldn't help it. And that's when I found the messages. At first, it was subtle. Just a few texts back and forth between her and someone named C. They were joking around, nothing out of the ordinary, until I found one that made my heart drop. It was a message from C that said, "Can't wait to see you later. Can't believe we're still sneaking around like this." I felt my stomach churn. The pit that had been in my gut since this whole thing started expanded. Who was this person? Why were they sneaking around with my wife? I didn't confront her right then. I was in too deep a shock. I needed to know more. So, I kept digging, and that's when I found it, an address. A hotel name. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see what I'd find, but the curiosity and the anger was overwhelming. I had to know, and that's when I decided to take things into my own hands. I couldn't stop thinking about that address. I tried to push it out of my mind, to pretend it didn't matter, but it was there, gnawing at me. Finally, a week later, I made up an excuse to be out for the evening, just long enough to go check it out. I'm not proud of it, but I drove to the hotel. The place was pretty upscale, which felt wrong somehow. If she was doing something innocent, why would she be at a place like that? I parked a couple of blocks away, out of sight, and just waited. I watched people come and go, thinking, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is all just paranoia. But the pit in my stomach told me I wasn't imagining things. After what felt like forever, I saw her, Anna, walking out of the hotel. She looked different. Happy, almost too happy. Not the usual tired, stressed version of her that I'd been seeing for weeks. She looked alive, glowing in a way that felt wrong. But then she wasn't alone. She was with him. I had no idea who he was, but I didn't need to. The way they walked side by side, how she leaned into him just a little too naturally, the way he kept glancing at her like she was the only person in the world. There was no doubt left in my mind. This was it. This was the confirmation. I felt a strange mix of numbness and burning rage. I couldn't even focus on the details of the guy, his face blurred by the shock of what I was seeing. I just watched as they got into a car together and drove off. It was like everything around me went silent. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to process it. I drove home in a daze, heart pounding, hands shaking on the wheel. But even as I pulled into the driveway, something in me felt calm. Not because I was okay with what I saw. Not at all. But because I finally had the truth. I knew exactly what was happening. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. She was cheating on me. When I walked into the house, she was sitting on the couch, acting like nothing had changed. She smiled when she saw me, but there was something off about it. Like she was waiting for me to say something, to ask where I had been, but I didn't. Instead, I just stared at her. She looked at me, eyes narrowing in confusion. "What's wrong?" she asked. I felt the heat of betrayal burn in my chest, but I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I just said, "I know. I know about him. I know everything." Her face drained of color, and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then, as if her whole world was crumbling, she tried to play it off. "What are you talking about?" I could barely hold back the laugh that threatened to escape. "Don't lie to me. I know where you've been. I saw you. With him." Her eyes went wide. She opened her mouth to speak, but then closed it again, her mind clearly racing. "Look, it's not what you think," she stammered. But I didn't want to hear the excuses. I didn't need them. I cut her off. "Save it. You think I'm an idiot? You've been sneaking around behind my back, and I'm done. I'm done with the lies. Done with the pretending. I'm done, Anna." She started to cry, and I almost felt sorry for her. But I couldn't feel anything but rage and disbelief. How could she do this to me? How could she throw away everything we had? I was numb, but I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized this wasn't going to be one of those "let's fix this" moments. There was no fixing this. She'd already broken it beyond repair. The moment I said I was done, I could see the shift in Anna. It was like the mask slipped, and for the first time, I saw the real her, the one behind all the lies and the secrecy. She went from panicked and teary-eyed to defensive in the blink of an eye. "Don't do this," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "Please, you don't understand." I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was bitter, sharp. "Understand? I think I understand perfectly. You've been seeing someone else behind my back for who knows how long. And now you want to sit here and tell me I don't understand." She took a step toward me, hands out like she was trying to calm me down, but all I could feel was the sting of betrayal. "It's complicated," she whispered, as if that was going to fix everything. "It wasn't supposed to happen." Stop. I cut her off, raising my hand. "I don't care about your excuses anymore, Anna. The truth is you've been lying to me. You've been lying to both of us, me and him." Her eyes widened, and she blinked rapidly, as if she couldn't believe I knew about him, whoever he was. But it wasn't about him. It was about her. I watched her fall apart right in front of me. The tears came faster now, the quiet sobs shaking her shoulders as she stammered apologies. "I never meant to hurt you," she gasped. "You have to believe me, I didn't want this. It just happened." There was a long, painful silence between us, filled only by her crying. It was the kind of silence that felt like it was suffocating us both. She begged me to understand. She told me it wasn't as simple as I was making it out to be. She said she felt disconnected, lonely, and that he had just made her feel alive again. That was the part that hit me hardest, the part where she said she felt lonely. All these years I'd been there, supporting her, being the partner I thought she needed, but she'd felt alone. I couldn't even respond. How could I? How could I defend a relationship where the one person I trusted more than anyone had completely shattered my reality? I love you," she whispered, still sobbing. "Ido, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." But it didn't matter. Nothing she said mattered anymore. I was done. I stood up, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. My movements were calm, controlled, but inside I was anything but. "I don't know who you are anymore. And I don't care to find out," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart felt like it was being ripped apart. "Please don't leave," she begged, grabbing my arm as I walked toward the door. "We can fix this. I swear we can fix it." But I was already out the door before she could finish her sentence. I don't know what I was expecting after I left. I guess I thought I would feel this overwhelming sense of relief, that I'd have all the clarity in the world. But that's not how it happened. Instead, I just felt empty. The kind of emptiness that makes you question everything you thought you knew. My mind kept replaying every moment, every conversation, every piece of affection we'd shared over the years, and I started to wonder how much of it had been real. How much of it had been a lie? Had I been blind this whole time, just too comfortable, too trusting to see the cracks in the foundation? I ended up driving aimlessly, not really caring where I went. I just needed to escape. Escape from the house. Escape from her. Escape from the person I thought I knew. After a couple of hours of just driving, I pulled over at a diner on the outskirts of town. It was late, and the place was mostly empty except for a few people at the counter. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to breathe, needed to think. That's when I realized something. I couldn't just let this go. I knew I wasn't going to be able to fix anything with Anna. That ship had sailed the moment she chose him over me. But I had to do something. For me. For my pride. For the man who had been willing to forgive and forget everything, only to be betrayed in the worst possible way. So I made a decision. I didn't want to just confront her and cry about how much it hurt. I didn't want to be the victim. I wanted to show her what she had lost, what she would never get back. That night, I made a plan. I remembered that one night, weeks ago, Anna had invited me to a party at her friend's place. I didn't want to go at first, hadn't felt like it, but she insisted, and I reluctantly agreed. The party was full of her friends, her co-workers, all those people who probably never knew the real her. People who never suspected that she was cheating. I wasn't going to go alone. The next day, I reached out to someone I never thought I'd need, her lover's wife. I'll admit, reaching out was harder than I thought. At first, I wasn't sure if she knew anything, but once I explained what was going on, how Anna had been seeing her husband behind my back, how I'd found out the truth, she didn't need much convincing. The pain in her voice, the shock, the disbelief, it mirrored my own. She wasn't angry with me. She was just crushed. We agreed to meet up, and when we did, I could see it in her eyes. She felt exactly the same way I did. She was tired of being kept in the dark, tired of being lied to, tired of feeling like a fool. By the time we were done talking, we had a plan. We'd both show up at that party, together. Her husband, Anna's lover, was going to be there too, and we were going to make sure they knew exactly what was happening. The night of the party arrived, and I could feel the tension building inside me. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I wasn't walking into this unprepared. I wasn't just going to sit there and let Anna continue with her lies like everything was normal. She needed to face what she'd done, and I was going to make sure she did. I picked up the other woman, the one who'd been through the same heartbreak I had, and we drove together to the party. I could feel the heaviness in the air between us, but it was a strange kind of solidarity. We both knew what had to be done. When we arrived, I saw Anna almost immediately. She was standing by the drinks table, laughing with some friends, like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked happy, too happy almost. But that's the thing about people like her. They were the mask of everything being fine, even when it's not. I stood there for a few moments, watching her, trying to steady my breathing. The moment I'd been dreading, the moment I'd been planning for weeks, was finally here. Then she saw us. At first, I don't think she registered what was happening. But then, her eyes locked onto mine, and it was like everything froze. Her face went pale. For the briefest moment, I thought she might faint. But then her gaze flicked to her lover's wife standing next to me, and I saw the color drain from her face even more. "What are you doing here?" Anna stammered, her voice trembling. I didn't say a word. Instead, I just stepped aside slightly, allowing her lover's wife to step forward. And then, in front of everyone, in front of her friends, her co-workers, I heard it. "I'm here because my husband, your lover, has been seeing my husband for months," the other woman said, her voice sharp but steady. "And you've been sneaking around with him behind my back, just like you've been doing behind his back." I could hear the shock ripple through the room as people started to realize what was going on. People started whispering, some of them backing away, but none of that mattered to me. It didn't matter to the woman standing beside me either. She was just as determined as I was. Anna went silent for a moment, her eyes flicking from me to the other woman, then back to me again. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. She looked completely speechless, caught in the act, exposed. The man who had been Anna's lover, my best friend, walked into the room just then, completely unaware of what was about to hit him. He froze in his tracks when he saw the two of us standing there with our arms crossed, watching him. Anna's face contorted with something close to panic, and the man's face shifted from confusion to immediate recognition. His eyes went wide as he connected the dots. He started, looking at Anna. You were supposed to keep this quiet. But he couldn't finish the sentence. Because in that moment, the silence in the room had already spoken louder than anything anyone could say. All the lies, all the secrets, were out in the open for everyone to see. And Anna, she just stood there, staring at me, her face pale and covered in guilt. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. I turned to leave, not wanting to stick around for any more of her feeble attempts at damage control. I didn't need to hear the excuses or the pleas. I'd already decided. I was done. As I walked out of that party, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. I had done what I set out to do, not for revenge, but for justice. For the person I used to be, the one who deserved honesty, who deserved loyalty. The days after the party felt like a blur. Everything changed, not just with Anna, but with me too. It's like I stepped into a new version of my life. A life where things were out in the open, and I no longer had to pretend that I didn't know the truth. I didn't hear from Anna for the first couple of days. She tried calling, texting, but I ignored her. I knew I couldn't have a conversation with her yet. I wasn't ready to hear her apology or listen to her tell me how sorry she was. Because I knew that deep down, her sorry wasn't for me. It was for her own guilt. A few days later, I did get a message from her. It was long, full of regret and desperation, and she begged me to meet up. But I was done with all the back and forth. She had chosen her path, and I wasn't going to allow myself to be dragged along any longer. I thought that after everything, the confrontation at the party, the lies exposed, I'd feel some sense of closure. I thought I'd feel empowered, like I had taken control. But the truth is, it wasn't that simple. I was angry, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But the hardest part was feeling this deep sense of loss. I hadn't just lost my wife. I had lost my best friend, my confidant, the person I thought I would grow old with. And in the wake of that loss, I was left with a lot of questions about myself, about what went wrong, about how I'd missed all the signs. Eventually, I met up with the other woman, the one who had been so kind to stand by my side at the party. She'd ended things with her husband, of course. There was no way she could stay with him after what had happened. But we ended up talking for hours, sharing our stories, venting our pain. In a strange way, it helped. It helped to know that someone else understood exactly what I was feeling. Someone who had been through the same betrayal, the same heartbreak. It felt like a small, comforting validation that I wasn't crazy for reacting the way I did. We talked about everything, from the shock of discovery to the emotional toll of letting go. We both had our scars, but we also had a strange kind of strength in knowing that we were not alone anymore. As for Anna and my best friend, I didn't bother with them. I'm not interested in any closure from either of them. They made their choices. I made mine, and I was moving on. It's been a few months now, and while the pain isn't completely gone, it's manageable. I've been focusing on myself, taking up old hobbies, spending more time with friends who actually care about me, and just rediscovering who I am outside of a relationship that was built on lies. I still have moments where I feel weak, where I question if I did the right thing by ending it all. But then I remember that I did what I needed to do. I didn't stay in a relationship that was built on deceit. I didn't let myself be someone's second choice. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm finally free. So to anyone out there who's dealing with something similar, all I can say is this: do what's best for you. Don't let someone else's lies and betrayal define your worth. It's hard as hell, but it gets easier. And someday, when you least expect it, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought you could be.